All right, let's talk about one of the most stunning animals on the planet, the Indian peacock. You've seen the feathers, you know the beauty, but the story behind how and why it got that way, well, that's where things get really fascinating. So let's dive in.
I mean, when you think peacock, what's the first thing that pops into your head? It's this, right? The train. It's this single, incredible fan of feathers that basically is the animal in our minds. But here's the thing. That train isn't just a bunch of pretty feathers thrown together. No way. It's an absolute masterpiece of evolution, something sculpted over millions of years by some pretty intense pressures. It was literally designed to be as jaw-droppingly beautiful as possible.
Okay, so section 1, an icon of beauty. And we're going to look at more than just the feathers. Let's really dig in and get a sense of the sheer scale of this thing and the bird behind it all.
So, first things first, let's talk numbers. How many feathers do you think are in that massive fan? A few dozen? Maybe 50? Nope. We're talking about 200. Around 200 individual shimmering feathers. And a little fun fact for you, these aren't actually its tail feathers. They're special feathers called coverts that grow right above the real tail. And the size of this thing, it's just mind-blowing. When a peacock fans out that train, it can be up to 5 feet wide. 5 feet! Think about that. For a lot of people, that's wider than they are tall. It's like a giant, living, breathing billboard made of color.
You know, with all that glamour, you might think they're delicate, but the bird behind the feathers, it's actually super tough. You'll find them all over forests and farmland in India and Sri Lanka. And they're not picky eaters. They're omnivores, so they'll eat seeds, bugs, even little reptiles. And here's the crazy part. Even while lugging around that giant train, they can still run pretty fast and even fly in short bursts to get away from trouble. Pretty impressive, right? Okay, but that brings us to the real mystery, doesn't it? I mean, how on earth does it create those colors? That shimmering, almost metallic blue and green. It looks impossible. It's not like a color you could just mix with paint. So what's the secret? How does nature pull off this incredible magic trick?
All right, section 2, a trick of the light. And this is where we find the secret to that shimmer. And the answer is just, it's so cool. It has nothing to do with chemistry. It's all about physics. That shimmer is basically one of nature's greatest illusions.
Okay, so think about color for a second. There are basically 2 ways to make it. The first way is the one we're all familiar with. Pigment, like in paint or ink. A chemical just absorbs some light and bounces back the color we see. Simple enough. But the peacock, it uses something way, way cooler called structural color. And you've seen this before. It's the exact same thing that makes a soap bubble shimmer with all those rainbow colors.
So what does that actually mean? It means, and get this, there's no blue pigment in a peacock's feather. There's no green pigment either. None. Instead, the surface of the feather is covered in these tiny, tiny crystal-like structures. And these little structures are arranged in such a perfect way that they basically bend and bounce light waves around, reflecting only certain colors back to you. The color isn't in the feather. It's being created by the physical shape of the feather. Wild, right?
So just remember this. It's not paint. It's pure physics. That whole breathtaking show is just physics doing its thing. Absolutely incredible.
Okay, so now we know how the peacock makes those colors. But that just leads to the next big question, right? Why? Why would evolution put in all this work to create something so complicated and so flashy? Well, the answer comes down to one thing: the art of seduction. This whole thing is basically a performance, a huge courtship ritual. First, the male puts on the big show. He fans out all 200 of those feathers. Then he starts to vibrate them. It makes this rustling sound, and it makes all those colors just dance and shimmer like crazy. And he does all of this while parading around for the females, who are basically the judges of the whole competition. And these judges are very picky. They're looking for specific things. Scientists think that the peahens, the females, are looking for a couple of key traits. They want to see more of those famous eye spots, and they're looking for symmetry in the pattern. Basically, a big, bright, perfect display is like a giant, honest sign that says, hey, I'm healthy, I've got great genes. But, and there's always a but in nature, isn't there? There's a dark side to all this beauty, a really dangerous flip side. Because being the most beautiful bird around, well, it comes with a price. And this really gets to the core of a huge idea in evolution, the trade-off. There is a very real and sometimes fatal survival cost for being this beautiful.
And that cost becomes painfully obvious during one specific time of year where the peacock lives, the monsoon season.
Here's the problem. Those gorgeous feathers, which are so light and perfect for showing off, become a total nightmare when they get wet. Imagine all 200 of them soaked with rain. The train gets completely waterlogged, super heavy, and suddenly the peacock can barely run or fly. The exact same thing that was meant to attract a mate now makes it an easy target for predators.
And that's the central dilemma for the peacock, isn't it? It's this constant, high-stakes balancing act between looking good enough to find a partner and, well, staying alive. It really leaves you with this one big question. In the tough game of survival, at what point does all that beauty become a burden? It's just a perfect reminder that in nature, even the most beautiful things, they always come with a cost.
You know the image, right? That incredible burst of iridescent blues and greens, a fan of what looks like 100 eyes. Of course, it's the Indian peacock, one of nature's most famous icons. But what if I told you that stunning display isn't just for show? Nope. It's a high-stakes story of physics, seduction, and survival. Let's dive in. When you picture a peacock, this is what you see, isn't it? That almost impossibly beautiful, shimmering train of feathers. It's so much more than just plumage. It's the bird's whole identity, really. A living, breathing work of art that has captivated people for centuries.
But here's the thing. This isn't just some random act of beauty. That train is an evolutionary masterpiece, carefully shaped over thousands and thousands of years by one of the most powerful forces in nature for one very specific, very high-stakes purpose.
So, before we get into the why behind all this, let's just take a second to really appreciate the sheer audacity of this display. I mean, the scale and the intricate detail are just, well, they're mind-boggling.
We're not talking about just a few fancy feathers here. A single male peacock's fan is a coordinated display of up to 200 individual, highly specialized feathers. 200. Just let that sink in.
And the size of this thing, it is just breathtaking. When it's fanned all the way out, that train can stretch 5 feet across. That's wider than a lot of kitchen tables. Can you imagine the sheer energy it takes to grow, maintain, and just carry that thing around all day? It's a massive biological investment. And the details are where it gets really fascinating. So, fun fact, these aren't actually his tail feathers. They're called coverts, and they lie on top of the real tail. Each one of these feathers is tipped with that famous eye spot, that hypnotic pattern of blue, bronze, and green. That's what gives the whole train that shimmering, almost metallic look that seems to change with every little movement. You know, that whole shimmering effect brings up a really cool question. How does a bird create colors that are so vibrant they look like they were painted with metallic ink? Well, the secret isn't paint at all. It's actually a brilliant trick of physics. Now, seriously, think about that for a second. How do you get these unbelievable blues and greens when the feathers themselves have zero blue or green pigment in them? The answer is that the peacock isn't a painter. It's a master of manipulating light itself. Okay, so here's the key idea. Most of the color we see in the world, like in a red flower or our own hair, comes from pigments.
Pigments work by absorbing certain waves of light and reflecting others. But peacocks, they use something way more clever: structural color. Instead of absorbing light, their feathers are built to literally bend and scatter it. And that's why the colors shimmer and change when you move. It's an illusion created by physics.
The scientific name for this is structural coloration. So if you were to zoom way in, you'd see the feathers are covered in these microscopic crystal-like structures. When light hits these tiny little structures, the light waves interfere with each other. Some colors get amplified and others get totally canceled out. It is literally biological engineering on a nanoscale, creating a living light show. Pretty amazing.
So we have this incredible nanoengineering that creates the color. That's the how. But that doesn't answer the biggest question of all, does it? It doesn't answer the why. Why would evolution go to all this incredible trouble?
And the answer, after all that complex physics, is actually surprisingly simple and incredibly powerful. It's all for love. Or, to be a little more scientific about it, it's all for seduction. This entire energetically draining, unbelievably complicated spectacle is designed for one reason and one reason only: to convince a female that he's the one.
And this isn't some random display either. Oh no. It is a carefully choreographed performance. He starts by fanning that train out to its full 5-foot glory. Then, he starts to vibrate the feathers, making them rustle and shimmer to catch the light just right. And finally, he parades back and forth, making sure the female gets a fantastic look from every single angle. But the female, the peahen, she's not just a passive audience member. She is a very discerning critic. And she's looking for specific things: the sheer number of those eye spots and how symmetrical the whole display is. Why? Because you can't fake this. A vibrant, full, symmetrical train is what we call an honest signal. It's proof that the male is healthy, strong, and has great genes. But this whole evolutionary arms race for beauty, it has a dark side. The very feature that makes a male irresistible to a mate can also make him a giant, shimmering target. It's a really dangerous trade-off. As one of our sources so perfectly puts it, there is a very real survival cost of such extravagant beauty. And that's not just a poetic phrase. For the peacock, it's a daily life-or-death reality. And that cost becomes brutally, painfully clear during one specific time of year in its native India and Sri Lanka, the monsoon season. So here's the problem. When that magnificent train of 200 feathers gets completely soaked by the monsoon rains, it turns into a heavy, waterlogged anchor. All of a sudden, the peacock can't run or fly properly. Its greatest asset for attraction becomes its single greatest liability for survival, making it a tragically easy target for predators like tigers and leopards. And that leaves us with a really fascinating final thought, doesn't it? The exact same trait that ensures your genes get passed on to the next generation can also be the very thing that leads to your own death. It is the ultimate evolutionary balancing act, which really makes you wonder, in the high-stakes game of survival, when does beauty become a burden?